who wouldn't want to be a Marvel superhero? Superpowers, sweet duds, a juggernaut of a franchise that just keeps getting bigger. Some people have already taken their already massive multi-picture deals and extended them just to stay in the MCU. It's a pretty sweet gig. Not everyone who wants it gets it, and not everyone who could get it wanted it. Like with any movie, Marvel movies go through a series of casting possibilities before landing on that one person who takes the role you can't imagine anyone else in. Let's take a peek into the multiverse of possibilities and see who could have suited up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe had things gone differently. Captain America is an iconic character, but despite his iconic stature, or perhaps because of it, he's had a rough road when it comes down to iconic portrayals. For the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Avengers, it was key to get the moral center of the team just right, to find an actor that could embody that almost innocent optimism and a square-jawed determination. Marvel Studios has managed to find the right actors sometimes by thinking outside the box, like pulling slightly doughy Chris Pratt from Parks and Rec and turning him into the muscular Star-Lord, just not as muscular as Thor. Thor didn't just intimidate Star-Lord. Another sitcom star had gotten as far as costume tests before seeing Hemsworth as Thor and realizing he wasn't superhero material. The Office's John Krasinski had suited up, and seeing Hemsworth Thor bowed out of the role, leaving it open for another Chris. Captain America isn't the only character in the Marvel pantheon to reach iconic status. The Stan Lee and Steve Ditko created everyman hero Spider-Man is arguably the most popular character that emerged from the House of Ideas. Unlike Captain America, however, his track record for portrayals hasn't been quite as spotty. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man featured Tobey Maguire in the role, who eventually passed the role on to the very enthusiastic Andrew Garfield. When Sony and Disney reached their apparently short-lived deal to have Spider-Man visit the MCU, it was time to find another person to wear the red and blue. One of the people they tapped was Call Me By Your Name star Timothée Chalamet, who was so eager for the role that he asked his agent if he could go to the studio to do his audition again. That's when he was told about how Sean Young showed up at the studio in the Catwoman costume, making the studio uneasy. Though at the time, there was a lot of things Sean Young did that made people uneasy. Should John Krasinski have taken the role of Steve Rogers, there's another bit of almost casting that would have made the chemistry between Rogers and the love of his life a whole lot easier. One of the actors offered the role of Peggy Carter before Haley Atwell took it was Krasinski's wife, Emily Blunt. But the on-screen, off-screen pairing wasn't to be, as both actors ended up turning down their respective roles. Peggy Carter wasn't the only role that she turned down for Marvel. She was also offered the role of the Black Widow. For both of the roles, she says that the timing just never worked out. Even without the mega franchise, she's managed to keep busy, even getting a chance to play on-screen husband and wife with her off-screen husband Krasinski in the hit horror film A Quiet Place. Having too many movies is kind of a dream problem for any actor to have. There were even rumors that she had been approached for Captain Marvel, but she dismissed that as fan casting, as no one had officially asked her. Doctor Strange was a hard departure for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not only was he a character firmly rooted in magic while most of the rest of the MCU was grounded in science fiction. Not only that, Doctor Strange, in his role as the Sorcerer Supreme, is the protector of our reality from the mystic and interdimensional threats. It's a pretty big responsibility. While Strange isn't above a good quip or two, he's a character that carries that I know all the threads of the universe and they're kind of a bummer weight around with him. He did have to bring the entire MCU into a fight that he knew ended with Tony Stark sacrificing himself. Finding the actor with the right gravitas for the role was a search that, for a moment, considered the also enigmatic I'm Still Here actor Joaquin Phoenix. While not opposed to the idea of a superhero film, he had previously appeared in the Superboy TV series as Billy Hercules. He stated everybody was really happy with how things turned out. All parties were satisfied. This October, Phoenix will take on a different iconic role, this time of the Joker, in his Todd Phillips-directed solo movie, which is already getting Oscar buzz. Who knew playing Joker was Oscar bait? Iron Man was another one of those iconic Marvel characters whose road to the big screen was long. While industry magazines might have snarked at Marvel trying to make a go of it with their B-list characters, there were studios trying to bring the industrialist genius to the big screen all the way back to the 1990s. During that time, and even up to Marvel regaining the rights to Iron Man, there was one bit of casting that was popular for the evergreen popular genius, and that was evergreen movie star Tom Cruise. In fact, the choice was so popular that fans tend to think he was closer to being cast in the role than he really was. Tom Cruise, in an interview with comicbook.com, had to point out that he was never that close to being cast, but is not against being a superhero. He just has to find the right one. In what should be recognized as a theme by now, a lot of characters had a long walk to the big screen before they made their big splash in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just like Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Captain America, efforts to bring the first black superhero to the big screen go back 20 years before Chadwick Boseman took the role in the Ryan Coogler Oscar-nominated film in the 1990s. Another visionary director, John Singleton, had planned on teaming up with Wesley Snipes to bring the King of Wakanda to the big screen. Only kinda. While Snipes was taken with the idea of the technologically advanced and secretive Wakanda and its noble king and protector, Singleton wanted to set his Black Panther movie against the backdrop of the American Civil Rights Movement, with the conflict being T'Challa trying to reconcile with his son. Singleton, Snipes, and Marvel weren't able to bring the movie together, but then Snipes signed on to Blade, which of course wasn't a total loss. Even though Marvel couldn't find buyers for the characters that eventually made up the foundation for the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Avengers, they weren't exactly unknowns, but even a fair amount of comic book readers weren't that familiar with the cocky spacefaring misfits, the Guardians of the Galaxy, before director James Gunn introduced them to the world in 2014. This means that whoever takes the role doesn't have to conform to a lot of people's preconceived notions about the character, but its own pressure to create a fan favorite in a world that already has RDJ and Chris Evans in it. After Chris Pratt initially turned down the role, Chuck star Zachary Levi auditioned for the role of the space rogue hero after turning down the role of Shazam in the DC movie. Levi says that he really wanted the role of Star-Lord, but it eventually went to the initially reluctant Pratt, and Levi returned to the Shazam role that he was also initially reluctant about. Sometimes you don't know what you want until you got it. If the question in Hollywood is who can we get who is imposing and stoic with a smoldering amount of charisma, the first answer always seems to be Jason Momao. He got a star-making turn in a non-spin-off TV series as Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones. Since then, however, the tall, muscular actor has been the choice for tall, muscular characters who stare menacingly and don't wear that many shirts. Drax the Destroyer is just the kind of character, strong and menacing, and doesn't say much. It's how he turns invisible, at least he thinks so. Unfortunately, Momoa had noticed that he was already playing too many roles where he was painted up, shirtless, and didn't say much, and started consciously turning down those roles. So he turned down Drax to direct Road to Paloma so he could say lines and wear shirts. Fans of Momoa's torso didn't have to worry, however. He would return to his shirtless ways, taking on the role of the distinguished competition's ruler of the deep, Arthur Curry, the Aquaman. Coming a long way as the oldest member of the crew, in the youngest body in the Aliens of the Earth sitcom Third Rock from the Sun, Joseph Gordon-Levitt has become both an indie darling and blockbuster staple, at least for director Christopher Nolan, back in the early 2000s. When Nolan was trying to bring back the superhero film with his Dark Knight trilogy, he cast Gordon-Levitt as a kind of Robin in Dark Knight Rises. His role in Inception allowed him other sci-fi roles like Looper, as well as the freedom to do independent movies as well. Back when Edgar Wright was tasked with bringing the tiny hero Ant-Man to the big screen, one of the names that was tossed around again was Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Whether or not he was actually considered is a bit of a gray area with a non-dimensional dismissal at the time. Soon, however, Wright left the film over creative differences, and the other name in contention, Paul Rudd, took over the role of Scott Lang. Olivia Wilde is no stranger to science fiction. After a long-standing role in the medical drama House, she left the series to pursue a film career. While actors leaving popular series to become movie stars is usually the last we hear from them, Wilde has managed to continue to find work on the big screen. Several actors had been considered for the role of Gamora before Zoe Saldana took the role. Adrienne Palicki had also been considered to be the big green killing machine. Mean Girls and Art of Racing in the Rain star Amanda Seyfried was also reportedly considered for the role. role. In the end, Zoe Saldana ended up owning the role in a way that makes it hard to imagine anyone else in it. Right up to the moment that Robert Downey Jr. privatized world peace and brought the Marvel Cinematic Universe to life, things were kind of rocky for Marvel. Iron Man came just a few years after another big Marvel movie with a notable director failed to wow fans, though it did make over $250 million worldwide. That meant that Ang Lee's Hulk movie was destined to get a sequel. The only problem was that the sequel wasn't going to play on the big screen, but instead was going to be a direct-to-DVD affair. Bruce Banner star Eric Bana decided against reprising his role for that reason, and the search for a new Banner began. We were still 2 banners away from Mark Ruffalo making the difficult character a star. To replace Bana as Banner, the studio looked to X-Files star David Duchovny, who already had some experience playing a troubled genius as Fox Mulder. Production of the sequel took too long, and the rights to the Hulk reverted back to Marvel, who retooled the movie as a proper introduction for the ever-loved Hulk in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Ed Norton in the role of Banner. Marvel Studios has a practice of picking its stars and creative talent from the field of independent and smaller pictures. Before directing Black Panther, Ryan Coogler had made his name with Fruitvale Station, the telling of a tragic real-world story. Before Jon Favreau began the MCU with Iron Man, he was making movies like Swingers. Of course, Coogler had also made the Rocky spin-off Creed before taking on Black Panther. When it came time to introduce the Scarlet Witch to the Avengers in Age of Ultron, Whedon's first choice was another actress more familiar in the roles of much smaller films than the blockbuster world of Marvel, Saoirse Ronan. The actor with the name so hard to pronounce that she had to write a song about it for Saturday Night Live might have had an easier time maintaining Wanda Maximoff's often drifting accent. Either way, Ronan turned down the role and later went on to acclaim in the movie Lady Bird, and another indie actor, this time from Martha Marcy May Marlene, Elizabeth Olsen, became Scarlet Witch. The movie industry has a tendency every now and then to try and crown new it people, actors who are destined to capture the imagination of the public and turn any movie they appear in into instant hits based on nothing but their good looks and affable charm. What usually happens is the so-called it actor ends up in a movie where their carefree smile on the poster doesn't turn a turkey into a hit, and suddenly they're not so it anymore, regardless of whether it was the actor's fault or not. Such is the fate of Josh Hartnett, one-time It Boy, who then started Michael Bay's not as successful as hoped Pearl Harbor, and Josh Hartnett lost his It status. While Kenneth Branagh was ramping up to bring Marvel's version of Thor to the big screen, Josh Hartnett was reportedly considered a top choice for Thor's brother and rival Loki. Now, it seems strange to think of anyone other than Tom Hiddleston as Loki, but at that time, Hiddleston was busy auditioning for the role of Thor instead. It was a topsy-turvy world in Thor pre-production. Things seem to have worked themselves out though, well, except for Josh Hartnett. Some actors get to have their it moments, fade, do something critically well-received, and then have to get a whole new career afterwards. Such is the case with Jim Carrey. After becoming a breakout star on In Living Color, the rubber-faced Jim Carrey went on to comedy blockbusters like The Mask, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and Dumb and Dumber. Then, Warner Brothers felt that their Batman franchise was getting too dark to be a toy-generating franchise and cast the manic actor as the Riddler. While Batman Forever's worst sin was being the forgettable Batman, it wasn't the best thing for Carrey's career. This didn't put an end to Carrey in superhero movies, though. 2 decades later, and he would take on the role of Colonel Star and Stripes in Kick-Ass 2, when his name was also rumored to be in consideration for the voice of Rocket Raccoon in the upcoming Guardians of the Galaxy. The release of Kick-Ass 2 coincided with some tragic national events that led to Carrey pulling out of promoting the movie heavy on gun violence, which might have put a damper on his eagerness to play the gun-happy Rocket. There was more musical chairs over in Asgard before the casting had settled into the 2 Odin sons that we've come to know and love. The net for the Thunderer had been cast wide. That is, so long as you were at least a 6'3" and 200 pounds. As it turns out, there were a pair of Australian brothers who fit that description. Chris and Liam Hemsworth both sent in audition tapes, but only one of them heard back. Liam even went on a few more callbacks for the role, while Chris never heard back at all. While Liam was auditioning to become Thor, Chris went on to make the meta-horror hit A Cabin in the Woods. Fortunately for Chris, that movie was directed by none other than Joss Whedon, whose next project was going to be the team-up movie The Avengers. Once Liam and the other shortlisters for the God of Thunder were passed on, Whedon convinced Branagh to give Chris another look. This time, it took, and Chris got the role. Those are some of the people who have either been rumored for roles, didn't make the cut, or turned down being a hero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Who are some of your favorites? Which ones do you think are dodged bullets, or who would you have liked to see? Let us know in the comments, and hey, while you're there, be sure and click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.